Listen.
Welcome to Nintendo Voice Chat for the week of June 23rd, 2017. I'm your host, Jose Oterrible, and this is IGN's Nintendo Show. Coming up on Nintendo Voice Chat, we have a lot of things to talk about this week. We're going to talk about the announcement and my departure. Obviously, that's a big topic on the show. But then we're not just going to stop there. The show must go on. And we're going to specifically talk about Mario Odyssey, Metroid Samus Returns, and also even there's a Metroid Prime 4. I mean, what's going on? Like, all of our dreams came true this E3. Then we're going to grade Nintendo's E3 performance and talk a little bit about the whole package. And finally, we're going to reminisce and talk a little bit about the future of the show and what that means for you. Joining me to talk about it this week, Zach Ryan.
Howdy.
Herr Schneider.
You rotten little...
And Brian Altano.
Can we bring the energy up in here a little bit? It's like a funeral.
I
can't tell if it's because you're recovering from the E3 flu or if you're getting sentimental, but
his voice is going.
It's a mix of a few things. You always I pictured how this would go in my head, and it's already gone off the rails.
Was it like confetti and like champagne? And
I don't know. I mean, you got some. Like that would, yeah. All right. Before we get on with this, though, really quickly, you don't forget, so NVC is Nintendo Voice Chat, and you can find us on IGN.com. Just head over to the show tabs page and click down to find NVC. Or you can find us on YouTube, youtube.com/Nintendo Voice Chat, or search NVC. You'll be able to find us there. And you know what? Subscribe. This show's going to be around for a while, and there's some really cool stuff to talk about with that. And the changes that are coming are not the end of the world. This is going to be an awesome beginning, and that's how I look at things. Let's start with this announcement then.
Metroid Prime.
Yeah, let's start there.
No.
So by now you've heard I took a job. I took a job at Nintendo. Can't go into a lot of specifics about what it involves. But what I can tell you is that it's not something I didn't take a job at IGN to say, oh, well, Nintendo's next. If anything, people around me joked. They'd be like, one day you're going to end up at Nintendo. And I'd be like, whatever. Like, that's not for me. Like, I enjoy this. But something came along, and it was just one of those like, well, I can try this, and this could be cool, but I don't know. Like, it's scary. Like, it is. Why are you laughing at me?
No, I'm laughing because I've already seen conspiracy theories online. It's like, oh yeah, that's why he gave Zelda a 10, and it's like he was. It's like, oh my god, like like silly. Nintendo goes like, anyone who gives a Nintendo game a 10, we gotta hire them. They gotta hire every single person who gave Breath of the Wild a 10 now. That's like hundreds of people. But why? If I was Nintendo, then I'd hire the guy who gave it a 6, and then I'd invite him up in the office and go like, you're hired, you're fired.
Wow.
That's how you do it.
Think that's how it is?
Look,
I'm glad you don't run Nintendo.
No. Yeah.
With an iron.
It'll be all F-Zero.
He doesn't run it yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
No, I mean, look, guys, we're obviously sad about this. Jose, you know that. We've talked about this a bunch. We learned, right before E3, which out of the, like, if there was a book about like the worst timed things in the history of things,
I'm not gonna lie,
you would be in there.
It's at the top of the list for sure.
It's near the top. Yeah, I don't know that I would put it at the very
at
tip.
the very top. Okay, good.
And so then
Thank you,
But your timing wasn't wonderful. Yeah.
Some people noted that you were absent from a lot of our coverage. Obviously, he wasn't absent; he was working behind the scenes. But you don't want to have someone like with us having the knowledge that you were going to Nintendo, being on the air. And
that would be unethical.
That's my favorite show ever.
No, that would have been hideous.
We trust you wouldn't have done that. You would have been honest about it. But we don't want to put anybody in that situation.
Yeah, and so I got to thank you guys too. Even publicly acknowledge that I really appreciate you guys scrambling behind the scenes to change the live show, to change a lot of editorial appointments, and to show up and like take those spots because saying yes meant, okay, you got to stop doing the thing you really like care about right now. And that was hard, but you guys handled it very well. I must say that.
We weren't awesomely happy about it, to be honest.
I know.
We were banking on you for like the Bill Trinan interview to, because that was our first time kind of to react, even though I didn't have a voice.
Yeah, I heard you got you sounded really, really bad.
We did a fan meet and greet at E3 before E3 actually, and the music was a little loud.
A little?
So we had to, answering questions from fans, like my voice was gone.
Just shouting questions or answers, yeah.
So it's your final NVC?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? You're going to like dance or do something? Are you going to rap?
I don't think you're ready
I
for that.
don't know that Jose's got that funky flow to really get on the microphone.
I could do
rap.
Oh man, I could do plenty.
Yeah.
No. I think instead, rather than we'll spend some time reminiscing later about some of the fun stuff we got to do on this show.
What are we gonna do with the show without you?
Well, that's what I want to talk about because
Great
obviously there's a future in mind, of course, and I'm very proud to help announce this. But the future host of MVC is at this table, and if you look around real quick, Sean, let them sort of look. Let's all point to him on 3, 2, 1.
Hey,
it is Per Schneider.
It's absolutely fair.
Per Schneider is going to basically, you're going to be the interim host for MVC.
Yes.
That's sweet. That's awesome.
We're incredibly happy about.
Same.
I'm very happy with that too. Obviously, got some like giant boat-sized shoes to fill here. You got a full-time job as a video producer.
True. Yeah.
You've got how many shows do you host?
I
You
host too
like
many shows. I know when
420 shows.
the moment for like in transparency here, the moment Jose said he was going, I ran to Per and I was like, I love NVC. I adore it. I want to be on it forever. I don't want to
host it.
I don't want to host it. I had just come off of E3. I hosted like 6 hours of Nintendo stuff one afternoon. This is a good opportunity for you because you've been at this company for 40 years and you finally get your own show.
I'm finally gonna make it.
You're finally gonna make it.
Well, I'm humbled. I'm obviously the third best choice, so that's great. But we are actually looking for someone to really fill Jose's shoes, right? So if you're the kind of guy out there who's been writing articles, blogging, making YouTube videos, streaming on Twitch, this is the time. I mean, pay attention. We have a couple of job openings on editorial. They don't come around all that often, although it seems like Nintendo is hiring a lot of people from the opening. There are not that many openings, and it is tough to break in, and you have to really show, not like in the old days when I applied where I could write a pretty article and hand it in.
Right.
You have to.
You wrote pretty articles?
Yes, I wrote pretty
Flowery.
articles.
Yeah.
Flowery.
Like I drew a little margins.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
No, but you also have to show that you can do stuff on camera,
Right.
that you can play and commentate and all that stuff. So if you think you have what it takes, find our jobs wanted post and apply.
Yeah, and know Nintendo. Like,
Oh, yeah.
be a Nintendo expert. Like, I'm on the show because I'm a huge Nintendo fan, but I would never call myself a Nintendo expert. You know what I mean? Like, there's gaps in my Nintendo knowledge that I look to people like Jose, I look to people like Brian and Per to be like, oh, that was actually this person, or that came out in this year. And like, while I know a lot of that stuff, I don't know all of it. And that's the kind of person that we're looking for, is somebody that has that Nintendo knowledge to the highest degree. So,
And for now, you're going to have to settle with the guy that reviewed Ocarina of Time.
also good
for us.
Also fantastic.
Yeah, I mean,
close,
Per, like
a close second, if you will.
No, it's always been an honor to work with you, around you, directly with you on the show. So I'm really excited to see where that goes. And you're gonna have some help from your friends, such as me and Zach. We'll bring on people like Miranda and Jonathan Dornbush and Alana and Max and everybody else we can throw into the mix to bring in extra voices to help us cover the your Fire Emblem. I don't.
Yep.
I don't know much about Pokemon. We've got a well-versed staff of people that do.
I will say this though, I think the best part about this message, and I want to speak for the community here, because stepping away from the show for a second, a lot of people admire you and a lot of people respect you, and I think that is, I think it's a major benefit to having you in this.
Oh, thank you.
And it, we'll get to it later, but it has been a pleasure to work with all of you on this. And we'll definitely, we got
You can't start the waterworks yet.
Just in case. We got tissues on the ready for that. But let's transition. All right. So let's talk a little bit here about, let's start with Super Mario Odyssey, Metroid Samus Returns, and Metroid Prime 4. 3 announcements, one of which we knew was coming, 2 of which we absolutely bet everything would not happen, even though we've been kind of bringing it up for weeks.
That's right.
On this show. Obviously, we now know where my hat is going, so I won't have too much to say. But
she gets a hat now?
Yeah, Mario gets a hat. But Nintendo, let's start there.
All
with it.
Nintendo properties moving forward. So
with Mario Odyssey, let's start there. Major presence at E3.
Yes.
The biggest part of the booth. We got to see New Donk City, Testarossa, a woodland area, the idea of visiting kingdoms, that this is the first sandbox Mario game since Mario Sunshine.
15 years, yeah.
Yeah, and this hilarious and weird, and the internet loves it, capture mechanic involving a hat named Cappy. Like, I was like, how could it get any more on the nose, but so good?
Look, last time they got everybody talking about having cat outfits, right? Like they always have this little thing that they keep secret that makes people go, oh, that's so charming or so surprising. The whole capture mechanic, the fact that they started out the trailer with a T-Rex that looked ripped right out of Universal Studios, Jurassic Park. They start with that and then they put a hat on it. Then they put mustaches on things. And then you suddenly realize, you're like, oh, everything that was an enemy, I can take over now. Like,
now
that's
it's a friend.
Well-kept secret too, I thought.
Well, not everything.
Most.
There's a weird law to it in Nintendo universe, as always. Some of them have to have like if they have a hat already, you can't possess them.
No, you can't wear two
So you
hats.
can't just like capture like a real man on the street when you're running around New Donk City.
No, but certain men in New Donk City you can. I had a lot of listen to our Bill Trinan interview. I had a lot of questions about stuff like that.
Yeah, you were very kind of concerned with the physical, like the actual.
I went full
world.
Putnam Whipple.
Yes.
Yeah, it's weird. Like it's a weird thing to include in a Mario game, and we've seen enough of Mario Odyssey in previous events that I kind of felt like I had a feel for it, and then that reveal when it was he threw out the cap and took possession of like a bullet bill or something.
Frog was my favorite.
Yeah, it was like
goodness.
And a cab.
Oh, this is weird as hell. Like this is something totally new and wholly unique in a Mario game, which I'm all in for. It's got this sort of weird like Link's Awakening weirdness vibe to it that I really
dig. But it doesn't stop there. Like, look at even you will go through a warp pipe and you are now on a mural in 8-bit graphics. And it is classic controls.
Right.
You have all these costume changes too. I dressed up Mario as Joe Pesci. Like, he had like the black pants and like the fedora, and I was like, he looks just like him. It is something that surprised me because again, it is a sort of out there mechanical idea, but at the same time, they just somehow make it make sense.
Is it any stranger or more out there than Mario running around in space without a spacesuit on, or Mario running around with a water pack that propels him
or
in
the double
air,
cherry? Just the idea that he clones.
I think this one is weirder. Like, but when I played it, I tried to throw my hat at a cab, and I couldn't take it over. But I'd seen it in the trailer, and the Nintendo rep said, "Oh, that's not in this version." So there are definitely things that weren't in the playable that we saw.
Oh, I was going to ask you if the cab already had a hat on.
So I was like, cab doesn't have a hat. It's got a little sign. Maybe if it's occupied, like you can take it over.
This is a weird loss.
No, but they said it wasn't in there. But like, what struck me in that game is that I was running around doing stuff, and I saw kind of like this chasm. I'm like, oh, how do I get over there? And I had forgotten that you can possess or capture a bullet bill. And then like once you realize that, you just like you see so many paths to everything, and there are so many options, and it really is this kind of, it's got that sandbox try everything mechanic that we saw in Breath of the Wild, but it's in this box, in this giant toy box. And like, this was one of the games where I just didn't want to stop playing at E3.
Yeah.
I'm like, but I didn't see that thing over there yet.
And it was a timed demo. So
did any of you use your special media powers to extend the 10-minute demo?
No.
Did anybody? I don't think so. Like, I know I was limited to 10 minutes, and I actually went back a second time and played. So first I played
20.
New Donk City, and then the second time I went back and played. What was the other area?
Testarossa.
Testarossa area.
Yeah, it's you know, I told the story on Up at Noon today, but we brought 12 people to Nintendo's booth because everyone just wanted to play it, and we were like, we have an appointment, and everyone at IGN showed up, or at least a significant portion of us did, and we took turns passing the controller around. And in New Donk City, what I noticed was they all ran in a different direction.
Yeah,
and they all went to collect different moons, and we got news over the last few days. There's 30 to 50 moons in each level, and the cool thing is you get one and it doesn't pull you out. You keep going.
Yeah.
So there's something about that really feels like a fun time sink to me. I mean, we look at games like Crackdown is the kind of game that's just like, oh, go out there and collect all the orbs, right?
Yep.
And then Mario, I think, has got a lot more, I don't want to say the word is soul, but there's just something to it that has always been there for Mario games. And the idea of sitting down on the couch with my Switch in my hands and playing like 25 moons in a row, and then getting up and getting on a train or getting in a car and keeping that going is fantastic.
Well, it's a little bit like, you know the feeling very well because you've played Mario 64, you've played Mario Sunshine.
Actually,
and you know that like like finding those stars.
Screwed.
Yeah, we're done. When you find these hidden collectibles that they have, it's almost a reward. There's a puzzle to be solved, and you feel that the puzzling aspect of Mario is a bit compounded more than it's ever been, because there are things like, what outfit are you wearing? Will that allow you to get access to a special place where you may find a moon? Or, hey, you have to find these seeds in Testarossa to then bring them back to these 3 particular potted plants, and then there may be something there. Right. There's just a lot of incentive to explore, and I feel like Breath of the Wild taps into that a bit with Korok seeds.
Especially with the Korok stuff. Yeah.
But it doesn't feel as rewarding because there's 900 of them, and I don't know that it translates to the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this game, in my play experience, I was like, oh, there's got to be a moon in this building, so I'm going to go for it. And then it was almost like Homer Simpson seeing that dog walk by, going like, that dog has a puffy tail. Like, oh my God, look at that manhole cover. And then you throw your hat at the manhole cover and you find something else, right? Yeah. Like, there were just so many little things to do. What struck me was that it departed from Sunshine and Mario 64's kind of like very obvious objectives, like take down a boss, slide down this thing, collect 10 coins. It departed from that to give you more kind of story-based missions. Like, you can talk to a guy in a suit and he'll tell you, I need a scooter, or like they'll tell you something that you need. So then you move on, and in the back of your head, you had like, oh, that one guy wanted a scooter, this guy wants a cab, and you walk around and you pursue another objective, and then you spot something, you're like, oh, I remember it. So it has all this kind of multi-threading in it, which I think is really cool.
I think that as we play more and see more of this game, there's going to be more and more lines drawn between this and Breath of the Wild, because I did get a very similar feel to the way that like Breath of the Wild side quests work. Like that's how you're doing a lot of the quests in this game as well. Like you're talking to people in the world that are like, it sure would be cool if I could get this thing. And you're like, okay, I've seen one of those somewhere else. I can go and find that now.
Yeah. I think like the things to look forward to most are sort of like, how diverse does this world get, right? How weird does it get? We saw like, it's like fake Mexico and fake New York and stuff like that. But eventually there are these like sort of weird,
more abstract.
Like candy coated.
Like that polygon world that we saw. Like
that's the one that has me the most like, ooh, they're going to go very strange with this, and I'm excited for that.
I would be willing to bet there is an amazing retro reference that none of us were even expecting as one of those kingdoms. And that'll be that thing that everyone talks about when this game comes out.
Like the Van Gogh level before, New Super Mario Brothers. Like
well, see, that was more, art-wise, that was more unique.
But I mean like
more an abstract or a callback to like 64 or Sunshine specifically.
Well,
we asked Bill about that, right?
We did,
And Bill was like, well, you're just going to have to wait and see.
You're going to have to wait and see.
Galaxy, I believe it was a
I'll
Galaxy.
find out. I won't tell you.
Galaxy 2 had a couple of stages where you ran along the backs or the sort of face of like a giant 8-bit sprite versions of Mario and Luigi. And the blocks changed shapes and rotated and stuff like that.
They did that a little in 3D World too, where there was like sort of homages. There were even Zelda homages in it. Remember, there was like puzzle solving at one part. You got to use like a fire flower to specifically turn on these torches. Although I didn't see that in this game, I still think that they will have those unique little call outs in there because they know people eat that up. They love it.
That's always been part of Nintendo's MO in a lot of their first party games, is hiding those little things, those little nods for fans to find.
I think the references we've seen just through the costumes and stuff like that. I mean, when you collect coins, you bring them to that hat store, you can trade them in for new costumes and hats. One of them we saw was like the yellow Mario Maker helmet with the red, like the yellow and red costume. I wonder how deep those references go, like just to see how far into, like there's stuff from like Super Mario Land 2 where he gets bunny ears. Like, sure, give me those. Like there's that spacesuit from Mario 2 that like, precedes Galaxy in every way. Like,
no, but talking about the suits, I mean, he dresses up. There's the Golf Open Mario outfit in there. There is the Mario Maker hard hat in there. Like there's Mario in a sombrero and poncho,
which is from the game QIX, which is like a Game Boy puzzle game where you
remember that thing.
You have to move lines, and for some odd reason, when you beat like 3 or 4 levels in a row, they're like, here's Mario in Mexico. Anyway, back to the game. That has
everyone needs a vacation,
Mario.
Brian.
Yeah, it's very true.
I mean, that's what has me most excited about this game. We got to play 2 levels. And in that level already, you got to experience like flight with a bullet bill, like just on a kind of lateral plane. Then you got this weird cactus fruit thing that could sprout really long legs. Then you did the Moai statue, and you realized, wait a second, this thing actually has a power to reveal hidden blocks. And like, just starting to think like what's in this
endless
game, what's in
possibility.
all
Yeah.
these other
And this is-
worlds.
you know, as we said in the Bill Trinan episode, this is the kind of game people are going to be pulling apart for decades.
Yeah.
They're going to be. I mean, there's Mario 64 speedruns that went up a week ago that are like faster than they've ever been, and they're like glitching through Bowser's chair and all this stuff. Like, oh, hey, I'm here. I have 0 stars. I'm ready to kill you.
And this one, you don't take fall damage either, so it just encourages. Like,
there's
it's courageous jumps.
I think it was Ryan McCaffrey climbed to the very top of New Donk City and then just jumped off and just lands, and he's just like, oh, hey, everyone, it's me, Mario. And everyone on the street's like, oh, God.
Yeah, he goes for a second. And
It is fascinating, too, when you think about that each individual kingdom is a contained space.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about the level of freedom like a Breath of the Wild, for example. They're using smaller real estate to do a lot of things, and we're still having trouble finding it all, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah, and that was the most interesting thing to me, like playing New Donk City. In the first moments that I kind of picked up the controller and was getting used to the feel of everything, I was sort of a little taken aback at how, one, like, the game feels a lot slower than other Mario games. I think that it's sort of to encourage that sort of exploration, to take your time and see things. But two, the variety within the level itself, because when you're running around on the ground in that initial like New Donk City area, it feels like a very different sort of Mario game. You're talking to people, you're exploring like tunnels and things like that, but one of the objectives that I had was to find something on a roof, and so like figuring out how to get up higher in the level, and then all of a sudden I was running across moving platforms. There was construction zones that I was bouncing from blocks to block, and like then I was like, oh yeah, this feels like the more traditional Mario that I'm used to seeing in a 3D space.
Well, and they put a lot of effort too into like movement, because he has a lot of ways to get around. I mean, he can roll up into a little ball like Sonic style all of a sudden, which kind of blew my mind.
Also,
when
talks
he
to normal people like in Sonic Adventure.
Yeah, there's that too. I'm still I find myself fixated on the idea that he puts his hands out straight like he's been doing in 2D games for years, but for whatever reason, the 3D games never had that animation in it. And I almost wonder, is there flight to this that we don't know about? Like, why that hand signal?
Right.
It is just a very distinct thing to me that stood out from Super Mario Brothers 3 and Super Mario World, and even the more recent like New Super Mario Brothers series that had the power-ups that you remember, or it just surprised me to see it there. Like it just momentarily it shows up and then he puts it down. I'm like, is there a greater purpose for this, or is it just a call out?
I'm really interested to see how sort of grand a lot of these play spaces get to be, because if you look at something like Galaxy, you had these medium to large size worlds, but it was mostly a bunch of tinier areas that connected together to create a bigger system. And then 3D World, obviously, every level in that game was roughly around the same size, or at least felt like it. And I adored 3D World, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I adore Galaxy, but it's cool to see something that's back to, you know, like the first time I stepped on a Bob-omb battlefield in Mario 64, you'll play it one of these days.
Of course, I've played those games.
Oh, that was a joke. Goodness.
Yeah, because in the comments they're already giving it to you. It was like the kind of thing where you're like, okay, well, I'm fighting enemies that are 6 times bigger than me, and I can see the top of a mountain, but I don't know how to get to it.
Right.
And there's a floating island in the sky, and like, so I'm really interested in the way all that works, because with that game you would set up a star, and in that star it would be like, well, only on star 3 are there cannons that can fire you over there. But when you remove all that, you just have this massive playground. So I'm really interested in sort of
what does that do to level
interacts.
design? Like that's the thing that kind of has me kind of questioning, because with Galaxy especially, I thought we've entered this period where you saw some of the best level design work you've
unbelievable,
seen from Nintendo. I mean, granted, Mario 64 and Sunshine had their level design, but it felt like the emphasis was a bit stronger in Galaxy series, only because the level was all you had. Like, there wasn't a giant hub or the playground style mentality to it.
I hear you. I mean, like, for me, the style is back to my favorite type of Mario game.
Sure.
I love that
exploratory,
box. And like Sunshine was a great game. It had some technical challenges, but had some really kind of clever level designs.
Out there,
I really love
challenges.
Sunshine.
The thing I didn't like about Sunshine was that you were locked into this island world with, I think, pretty lame characters overall.
Oh, yeah, those guys
and
are
like,
terrible.
You lacked that wonderful variety variety you had in Super Mario World. And like this one,
the people stand out.
This new game, first of all, like nothing looks like any Mario game before. It looks almost Sega-like. You know, like the city looks like out of Crazy Taxi.
I think like Zach nailed it with the Sonic Adventure reference.
Yeah.
Of sort of just like, well, I think just the weird interaction of a cartoon character and human men.
It's weird, yeah. But you also know they're going to Turnip Land and whatever. Like there's crazier worlds there, and I hope there's some throwbacks to like classic Mario worlds as well. Like remember like when the levels where you like small and big, and like the world changes around you. They had so many good ideas.
Yeah, I guess the last thing I want to point out is that before we move on to the Metroids, because we really need to talk about those, is that this capture mechanic really solves an interesting thing, though, that affected, I think, Galaxy, and even to some extent Sunshine and N64, and it was that there was no power-up game or a very reduced role of a power-up game to the way those games worked. You didn't have like your Fire Flowers or your traditional 2D stuff because on a 3D plane it had to work a little differently. And in a 3D plane, Mario had to be pretty much balanced to be good all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But now you have this idea that, well, I can possess whatever power I want. So if you have a hammer bro, you just throw your hat at him, and now you're throwing hammers, and you use that to solve something.
I think it runs into the same sort of limitations that Galaxy had, whereas in Galaxy it was like you get the B suit, but we have to make you go through water, and then you'll lose it. Or you get this thing, but then we're going to take it away from you. And I think this, you turn into a bullet bill for a little bit, but depending on certain criteria or certain areas, like you start flashing and then it goes away and you're back to Mario.
Right.
So I am interested to see if there's any sort of like kind of long-term unlockables. Like if you do get a repertoire of different costumes that you can switch into and just be like, I always have the hammer suit now, or I always have this, or like to see how cosmetic those things are and aren't.
Or if not, if the utility is done in the right way, where every time you possess something, there is something nearby or in that level that can be unlocked or found.
Back. Yeah.
Because you could get the cat suit in 3D World and carry it for the whole level. You could get the Tanuki suit in 3D Land and carry it for the whole level. So I'm interested to see how that works. I think that's kind of, and even like the new Super Mario Brothers games, not only did you carry the power-ups for the whole level, but you kind of had to sometimes. Like you would beat an entire level as Mini Mario, go back 3 worlds, go to the 4th stage, and then find a tunnel that you could only access as Mini Mario. So it kind of inspired you to play in a very strategic way that made you not lose things, rather than the game being designed in a way that would take it from you. So yeah, I'm crazy excited for it.
Totally.
All right, so then along with our excitement for that game is that we got not 1 but 2 Metroid games. So are we responsible for this? Can we take credit? Is that possible?
I don't think wearing a T-shirt every other week is going to really bring it back to series.
Every episode we made a Metroid reference. No, we're not responsible for this.
We were not the only people on the planet to constantly say
we were loud.
No, like Smash Brothers had Samus in it, and she's an incredibly popular character. Smash Brothers had 2 Samuses in it, right? Like it was only a matter of time, but it seemed like Japan just wasn't focused on it. And so, I'd like to imagine that NOA had a big role in saying, hey, we got to get going on this. But I also think Nintendo looked at the lineup of this machine and said, well, we don't have Battlefront 2. We need a first-person shooter. First-person shooters are the top-selling genre in the world of console gaming. And I think that's where they said Metroid Prime has to come back. Not just Metroid Prime.
Right. Yeah.
And then, the Mercury Steam thing, which they revealed later. They didn't even reveal during the E3 Spotlight.
The Spotlight was only about Switch.
An extra reveal. I was just so happy to see that they hadn't forgotten about the 2D game.
We've been saying for years now.
How cool is that?
It was like, if you couldn't develop a 2D Metroid internally, throw it to a team that can. And we all had different picks. My pick for years was Yacht Club. The Shovel Knight guys. But to see this go to a team that originally, when we were like, they made Castlevania for 3DS, which was whatever.
Specifically Mirror of Fate too.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't received very well.
Right. Yeah. And then looking at the way this is coming together, my fears were immediately thrown out the window. You have there's that thing where you're like, oh my God, there's a new Metroid game. Oh my God, there's 2 new Metroid games. Okay, wait, one of them's for 3DS. Oh, it's being made by these guys. Oh, wait, but people are telling me it's awesome. And then people are playing it that we work with. And yeah, it seems, the timing seems weird for a 3DS game, but it's also, there's 60 million of those out there. So why not?
I can't think of a better swan song for the 3DS if that's what this is than a traditional 2D Metroid game.
Yeah, I feel like if you sold your 3DS to get a Switch, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
but buy a dirt cheap 2DS,
Yeah.
The selection of Mercury Steam, I think it makes sense if you look at what those guys have done, right? They have worked on 2D games with polygonal characters and stuff. I don't want to hold Castlevania against him. Like, it certainly wasn't a bad game, right? There are lots of people who did like the 3DS game. I also, this is not a dig at Konami, but I think Nintendo takes the approach of saying, we're going to have to take time to get this right. And if it's not right, we're going to delay it, right? They have always been very open to taking their biggest game of the year and saying, oh, sorry now it's next year,
yeah.
right? And so I have a lot of confidence. When I first saw the footage running, I was like, oh, Samus looks really like skinny and like it looked really stiff. But then when you like play it and you like see it a little bit more, it actually all looks really good.
Yeah.
And blown up on a big screen, 3DS games never look that great.
That's true. Yeah.
But on the small screen, it's pretty.
And
it's fluid, runs great.
Did you get a chance to play it?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Sam Claiborne played it as well. And
Yeah.
he said that the biggest accommodation that he could give it, I said, how is it? And he goes, feels like Metroid.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
It's
said it
awesome.
feels great. Like
It seems fast and arcadey. I played the original as a kid, which is like bizarre because it's such a strange game.
Yeah.
yeah,
A lot of Game Boy games.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fairness,
to do a remake, to choose to do a remake of the second Metroid game, especially like in an era after AM2, this sort of unsanctioned, unqualified fan remake.
Right,
and then you've got
right.
this, they're like, no, we'll take that. We'll do it ourselves. We'll do it better. Maybe. I don't know.
I mean, Zero Mission, this is like controversial, but Zero Mission's probably my favorite 2D Metroid.
Zero Mission
Good one.
rules.
Great game.
It's up
Yes.
there.
I really, really like it.
It's definitely up there.
And that's no shot at Super Metroid, which is phenomenal. But Zero Mission is
No,
like
that's no charge shot at Super
Ah,
Metroid. Yeah, I knew he
there
was
we
going to say. I do want to focus a little on the mechanics of Samus Returns, right? One of the things that I thought was really smart that they focused on in the presentation was showing that Samus has a counter.
Yeah, that counter is awesome.
In every video game, you are at the mercy of when they get too close because what do you have to do? Create space to shoot back at them. And this completely fixes that issue of, okay, they come in, whap, smack them into the air, turn them around, expose a weakness. And it even seems like the cutscene driven, there's cutscene elements in the boss fights. Because if you watch some of the boss fights they had, like there was one that, I forgot what they call the creature, but it basically looked like an alien xenomorph.
Okay.
I don't remember the name of it though, but you saw it during the demonstration. They showed it later on. And the mechanics used in that fight where you have to kind of soften it up and then go for the counter at a very specific moment and then like grab it by the tail at one point, like you're firing at its gut and then grabbing it by the tail to like whip around it. And I'm just there like, holy cow, like, are you pressing buttons the entire time?
Yeah.
And if so, that is very cool because that almost is very, I mean, not production wise similar, but gameplay wise similar to Uncharted.
Yeah.
Uncharted has this great rule that no cutscene should be cooler than something you do in gameplay. In fact, gameplay should be the coolest thing you do, and cutscenes are exposition.
I mean, and it's like we've never described, or not in a very long time, have described sort of 2D Metroid games. I mean, we haven't had to describe them at all because there haven't been any, but as like something we would call cinematic. I mean, there are obviously there are cinematics in Super Metroid, and we got some story stuff in Fusion, which we mostly didn't really want.
Right.
And Zero Mission was a remake with some, some still images and stuff. But this has like full on camera panning. Like this is, and that's why it answers your question immediately of like, why isn't this like pixel art? Why isn't this sprite based? And it's like, well, because you can't do anything that dynamic. And it's taking a great lesson from Other M of all places, which did that incredibly well.
Yeah.
Like you would have boss fights, you would have cinematic moments in Other M where the camera would spin around and make you feel badass. And
Yeah.
this is doing that in a handheld now.
It's an unpopular opinion, one I've said here before, but there's parts of Other M that I really love.
Me too.
And seeing the similarities in Samus Returns to some of the stuff that I dug from Other M got me really excited for it. So.
But it's fixed. I mean, Samus Returns is fixed 2D.
Correct.
Right? Like the kind of angled things, like it seems to be only special sequences.
Yeah, you're not like running toward the camera.
It's not
or
Crash
running in on the
Bandicoot or
scenes,
anything
the
like
axis.
that.
Yeah, no,
but
you're not.
no, I mean, just kind of comparing it to the Game Boy game. Obviously, there are the moments where Samus is really big on screen, just like in the Game Boy game.
Right.
But then there are all the, you see the spider ball mechanic returning, but you see all these other things. Like she couldn't pull herself up to ledges in the Game Boy one, right?
No, that started with Fusion and it's
so
kind
they
of stuck.
added, like it's really a greatest hits of moves from all the different versions.
Mario pulls himself up on ledges in Odyssey. This is a good year for that, I guess, over at Nintendo.
Assassin's Creed age.
Yeah, I will say. Oh, didn't Mario do that in 64? I might be bugging.
I don't think so. Not
Yeah,
like
I know. I'm pretty sure, but it doesn't matter. I think the more important thing is it is still fun that they are making sure that these mechanics and these things sort of carry over. And specifically with Metroid, like I downloaded the trailer on 3DS just to see it in 3D, and I was like, "This looks really
do that.
good."
Yeah, I gotta do that too.
This
That's
looks
a good point.
very good. If you haven't downloaded it already, if you still own your 3DS, I think just pause the show, go check it out. It's
Grab that
it
Hey
is
Pikmin
cool.
demo
And then-
while you're there.
Yeah.
The Metroid,
Well, in UK, not in US yet. July. In July we get it.
but the Metroid Prime reveal. I mean, the reveal of Metroid Prime 4. It was a logo, right?
yeah.
It was a Photoshop logo, right? Like,
Yeah.
You know, or After Effected or whatever, right?
What did you want it to be, like an oil painting?
But it was the Metroid Prime 3 Metroid logo.
I'm glad you said
With
it.
a 4, yeah.
Shifted
Yeah.
over with an odd looking, Resident Evil Giraffe 4 on the side.
Yeah.
But it still got me super excited because it was basically Nintendo saying, okay, we hear you guys asking for this. Yes, it is coming. And not just Metroid is coming, Prime
is coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so, like, to me, it was a really effective reveal because it was more than just Metroid tentative. It was actually Metroid Prime 4.
Yeah, and this was a great celebration of the fact that we've been wanting something like this for 10 years now, obviously, a sequel to Metroid Prime 3. But it's also like we've seen Metroid stuff in Nintendo games for so long that it's like, it's
Such a tease.
It's such a tease, right? Like
Yeah.
you got like there was a level in Nintendo Land. There's stuff in Animal Crossing. There's stuff in there's references in pretty much every game. There were amiibo. Like they made merchandise, in the last few years that I bought, like little Samuses to put on my desk. And there's no new game. And then now there's two at the same time, and it was done so perfectly because you couldn't. It shut everybody up, basically.
Yeah.
You couldn't have anybody being like, I prefer it in 2D. Well, here it is. I like the Prime ones. Well, they're making that too.
Well,
Pinball?
Yeah.
it could also be a smart play because with 2DS and putting it out on 3DS, if that is in fact the intended for a younger audience, which I'm not sure, but so far the marketing seems to say that. You're reintroducing these kids or introducing them to a series that is one of your best. And then in 2, 3, how many years it takes for Metroid Prime 4 to resurface, they'll have the attachment. It'll be a completely different game, though.
Sure.
Right.
Let's see how that happens.
But I mean, look at
it'll be good.
those of us that grew up on Super Metroid and how quickly we adapted to Metroid Prime.
Oh, no, we did. And it was so exciting.
I mean, I
Yeah.
remember hearing about seeing like trailers for Prime and hearing that it was going to be this first-person shooter and being like, that's not Metroid. And then an hour into that game, the only sentiment that you could possibly have is like, yes, this is absolutely a Metroid game.
I mean,
no,
I
and
think
it's just
like the
like,
first time the visor comes down and you see the fog build up, you're like, oh, I am the Sith.
Yeah.
Well, and it's a lot like the 3D, 2D separation between the Mario games, but instead of, it's much different perspective, right? Like one is very much more intense and in there versus the other that's removed.
Also, children all over the world have tons of training from Metroid Prime Federation Force.
True.
Which was
That's true.
And
last year.
By the way, we have enough buttons for all the visor stuff and everything. The 3DS just wasn't, or the DS wasn't really made for a 3D
No,
shooter, I thought.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
This is going to work just fine.
Yeah.
Can I just say that I don't think that I've ever seen the IGN War Room go through such a range of emotions at E3 during any sort of trailer as I saw during the Metroid Prime 4 reveal, which is only, 30 seconds or something?
Yeah.
But there's the dark screen, and everybody's kind of like, oh, I wonder what this is going to be. And then, the sounds kind of start up, and there's this, cautious optimism, and people are like, I don't think that's what that is, but this could be it. And then as soon as the 4 popped up, people just started losing their minds and was standing up and clapping and cheering. It was great.
It's so funny to just see a bunch of grown adults start screaming at a number.
Yeah.
4! I love 4! The fourth thing that I love.
So I was at the pre-event. There was a Q&A around Mario and everything, and they obviously they showed us the presentation.
Yeah.
And,
You knew?
we had to keep it quiet, of course. But when the fog came in, it went.
Yeah, that noise.
Yeah.
I was like, I just turned around and there were a lot of grinning Nintendo people in the back,
Yeah.
and still most people in the room had no idea what it was. I was
Really?
so surprised. Yeah, when the blue fog starts making an S, I'm like, oh, you bastards.
Yeah.
I don't watch a lot of
good.
sort of reaction culture videos on YouTube, but there was one that was going around the other day that was just 25 minutes of hardcore Nintendo fans losing it to that number coming in.
I mean-
and it's infectious. Did you see the video of the at Nintendo World Store in New York City?
Yeah, saw that.
It's just
Yeah.
over the shoulders, and they're just it's it's so awesome to see that. You know? It's just
our
so
buddy,
cool.
our buddy Tim Geddes damn near did a backflip. During that reveal.
Yeah, I mean, it's just fantastic, right? Like it's just so cool to see this franchise return. It's been long enough. We covered like Assassin's Creed at E3, which is a franchise that's taking 2 years off, and everybody's excited about it coming back. And it's like, hey, how about 10 years?
Yeah.
Like, what does that look like?
I don't like the annual approach. Like, I feel like, especially with these big games, I also want time to like breathe after I finish them. I don't want to play another Witcher game, this year. I want some time to pass. And like, I don't want as much time to pass as with Metroid, because we've gone through that period before, like N64, where like, where is the follow-up to the Metroid franchise? And it took forever to come back. And hopefully this is now like Fire Emblem, where Nintendo says, this is one of our staple franchises. We're going to renew it every 2 years.
Yeah.
Or every 3 years you're going to get one.
Hopefully it's not like Fire Emblem, though, because I feel like they're just cranking out Fire Emblem all the time.
There are a lot of them now.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting franchise because sales-wise, it hasn't really moved the needle in a very long time. I mean, you have a couple of Prime games I think have crossed 1 million.
Yeah.
But in all, I mean, it sells better than something like F-Zero. But all in all, like, it feels special that this is happening because it's not really a guaranteed bet, but things are going so well with Switch, and the 3DS has such a strong and stable, big audience, a user base there, that like it's good to see these things come back, and I hope that people support them.
I think what you ran into is like, I mean, that's the kind of the family audience problem, right? Like the Wii, a Metroid game was really not at home on the Wii.
Right.
And it was a good game, and it demonstrated.
Was great.
But it demonstrated the controls, the welding stuff was awesome, but it wasn't as at home as far as the audience.
Right.
People didn't run out to buy this game.
Yeah, that's sort of
it was
hard
like Mario,
sci-fi.
Mario Kart, Wii Sports. All of these games sold really, really well. Metroid struggled on that machine, and I think with the Switch, I do think the Switch is bringing a lot of lapsed Nintendo fans back into the fold.
Yeah,
Breath of the Wild is a game you can't ignore.
Yeah,
as a player who played a Zelda game back in the 16 or 18-bit days, and you see this, you're like, you're gonna come back, right?
Sorry, I had to say something. That was 16th century, is what I said.
16th century, yeah. It's a very old company. Yeah,
125
one
years.
thing that we haven't touched on, not retro.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Interested to see what they're working on.
Yeah, what are they doing if not Metroid Prime 4? Like, what's their deal?
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously, I was surprised that a retro game wasn't shown this year at E3, because they have been silent for a while. We haven't seen anything. Of course, they've been working on stuff. I on the one hand, I'm sad that retro doesn't get to, be the main developer on this game. We don't know if they're helping with anything, if they're consulting, or if, Michael Kelbaugh, anybody from that side is actually helping out with this project. We have no idea. But we know they're working on something. And I think that's pretty exciting, that either they're getting to tackle an existing other Nintendo franchise, or they're doing something completely new that we haven't seen. So I'm cool with that.
So then the question remains, who's making Metroid?
Who's making Metroid? Well, they said it was a new team.
That's right.
That can mean really a newly assembled team, or it can be a new team from the teams that have done it before.
Right.
Or a new team that's never done it before.
I mean, new team could also mean like, oh yeah, the Smash Brothers Namco team is working on it. Like, we just don't know what that means.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of like fresh young energy at Nintendo right now, aside from Jose. But there's a good.
Yeah.
There's a good. I mean, you have people making Splatoon. You have people making ARMS. Right. There's that got you.
That's all right.
He's feeling his age right now.
It doesn't matter.
There's there's a new school, right? And like you look at E3, and it's really, I think it's more and more about the new voices and stuff like that coming in and creating new ideas.
Yeah.
I'm no spring chicken. I can smell my own.
I'm no spring chicken. All right, let's.
Jose, why don't you find out who's making that game? Just
sure.
Let us know. Sound off in the comments below.
Yeah, they'll love that.
Yep. Have good luck with that. So, next segment, let's talk about grading Nintendo's performance at E3 2017. So we're looking at the whole package here. You have the E3 Spotlight, which mostly focused on Switch. You have Treehouse Live, which focused on a lot of stuff, if you think about it. And then you even have the invitationals, which hopefully you guys have caught up with. I've seen a few, so I could talk a little bit to those. But as a whole, we've got announcements, right? We've got trailers for like Xenoblade, and they showed Kirby for the first time. You got a Pokken Tournament reminder along with, hey, we're making a new Pokemon RPG. You got Metroid Prime 4, Fire Emblem Warriors, a Zelda sort of section that was all about the DLC pack is coming.
That was cool.
The name of the second pack, which apparently I think is being called the Champions Ballad. New amiibo for each of the champions, and the Skyrim Zelda reminder. Yeah, we missed the Zelda, by the way, like the Metroid like squishy. Oh man, that if you're listening frustrated, apologies for that. These guys were going on long enough about Samus Returns. I thought about bringing it up, and I was like, let me just let them finish.
Oh, I was excited about that one. Already pre-ordered.
Immediately.
Really?
Yeah. So then,
that's September, right?
Yep.
It's so crazy.
So crazy.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I think someone from Nintendo told Kotaku that game's done. They're just in polish state at this point.
That's so awesome.
Great news. That's a long polish time.
Yeah, so Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle was shown, Rocket League with Nintendo branded content and crossplay, and Super Mario Odyssey. So that's just the spotlight as a whole. But how did they do? Give me the quick your quick reaction, your gut reaction, one sentence. Who wants to go first? And then you can expand on that.
I would say A-. I thought they had a fantastic showing across everything. I think that the pacing of it was a little weird. Like, I would have loved to see that Metroid announcement folded into the Metroid Prime 4 announcement. And I would have loved to see the
Samus Returns one.
And the Breath of the Wild Link Tunic in Skyrim thing folded into their conference and not Bethesda's. Like, there was just, and I would have liked to see, obviously, I always say this, but more third-party stuff. But, I think Rocket League's a good start. Finding out more about Skyrim's good. I just want more and more of that. And that's on them as much as it is everybody else to pay attention and see that this thing's doing well. That was really more than one sentence.
I'm surprised at your high rating. I mean, I want to clarify. I loved what I saw of Mario. I love the reveals of the Metroid games. If I had to grade the Spotlight itself, I'd give it a C+. And that's because I thought the pacing of it was really odd. It started with Xenoblade and it did not look that great.
Yeah,
it looked very
Xenoblade?
flat and not unpolished. And I don't think it was mounted the right way. Had they taken the reveal of the 3DS Metroid game, which happened afterwards, and had built this into the spotlight, and I know they wanted to focus on Switch, but they could have had a moment where they said, hey, 3DS owners, we haven't forgotten about you, and then rolled into Metroid. I think they would have had all these emotional highs. I think they could have constructed it better. But as an overall showing, it was really successful, and I liked it a lot better.
What would you give it then?
Yeah, I would give it definitely a B+ overall. The thing I didn't like was that I looked at the showing, I said, crap, the third parties are still not there.
Yeah.
We've demonstrated, Nintendo has demonstrated that this machine is good and people want it, and E3 gave us, again, FIFA and basically didn't give us a lot of it. It's an older version of FIFA being ported. I thought the Rabbids moment in the Ubisoft conference, my favorite conference at the show, Ubisoft had so much heart. That was really good.
And the Rocket League thing was a good third
And then Rocket League was awesome. The Skyrim thing was awesome, but the third party's not showing
Minecraft
up.
Better Together update. What about that? You got to switch in the Microsoft conference.
That was in the Microsoft conference.
Yeah.
But I thought for sure they would give people confidence that the third parties are not staying away and they understand that this is a different machine from the Xbox and PS4. And so you would see more support from Sega and EA and Ubisoft and everything. There just wasn't that much.
Well, in A Way Out, it doesn't help that A Way Out looks like a Switch game. Like in terms of it is a two-player driven adventure where you would imagine just popping off the Joy-Con and doing those assignments between two people.
And I want to be clear, I don't want games to be designed for this machine that have a hard time running on it or something. Like a game like an Assassin's Creed where you have to downspec it. Like I was hoping that Nintendo and third parties would come to terms in figuring out what's unique about this machine and what games you should bring. Now, there are lots of cool indie games coming. I thought the Rocket League announcement was fantastic. It's a game we've asked for. That was, by the way, one of my E3 predictions. I think the one I got right.
Yeah.
Really? But they're... I wanted more of kind of like, this is the future of Switch. Here's this year, which I'm excited about with Splatoon and Mario. It's so cool. And here's what next year is going to look like with the help from our friends. And I didn't quite get that, and that's why I was a little down.
That was Paris, one sentence.
Yeah, I was going to say, that was quite a sentence.
Yeah, sorry.
So I will say...
German sentences.
I will say to your point about the weird pacing and 3DS being left out of the spotlight. Keep in mind, this is Nintendo's first E3 with the Switch officially announced, right? Last year, we saw a lot of Breath of the Wild, but that was in the days when it was still the Nintendo NX and we had no idea what this system was. So I totally understand them dedicating their entire spotlight just to the Switch to make that a singular entity, right? That being said, I also give them a B+, not necessarily for the same reasons. I think having a game like Mario and Rabbids, which I loved, I was completely blown away by how into that game I was. Like, full disclosure, when that game leaked, I was like, that is the dumbest idea. And then seeing it on Ubisoft stage, seeing the support of Miyamoto behind it, I was like, okay, this has the potential to be something very, very cool. And just that vote of confidence from a publisher, a developer like Ubisoft alone, to me signals like, okay, maybe more third parties will see this and jump on board, which I think is great. The B+ for me comes from the idea that Nintendo has set up such an awesome year through the end of this year with Splatoon 2, Metroid, Samus Returns, Mario Odyssey, right? And then next year we're getting things like Yoshi, Kirby, already they've said 2018 that's coming out. That's great. But I think it was a huge miss to announce a Pokemon RPG, which people have been clamoring for decades, and to announce a game like Metroid Prime 4 and be like, it's coming, it's in development, it's coming soon. Like, I think it's smart to put it on people's radar, but I also think it's one of those things where it's like, okay, but what happes if, like you're saying, it doesn't meet the Nintendo level of polish and it gets delayed 4 or 5 years? Like, who?
Well, I think you're allowed that trick as a publisher once every 3 or 4 E3.
When you have a new platform, right?
I think, and I think you can do it. You can do it like if Nintendo came out every single year and they did that and never really materialized, which some of the other guys are starting to get flack for, I would think that's a problem. But they predominantly focus on stuff that you'll be playing within the next 6 months or a year.
Yeah,
it's a weird show because it's this is a very different, and we'll talk about the Wii U era in a minute because that's when we made a lot of NVCs, but this is a very different era than that, right? Like, this is an era where we're coming fresh off of Mario Kart, Zelda, ARMS, Splatoon's coming out. There's a ton of cool indies coming every single week. The system's selling really well. It's not, I feel like the pressure's not, like, you don't need to get an A+ when you've got pretty good grades all year.
Well, you've got Overcooked on the way. You've got Kerbal on the way. You've got a lot of games that people either recognize or are excited for on the way for the most part. They're just not
everybody.
From big, but they're just not from the EAs and
the Wii U was
and other publishers.
E3 had to save the Wii U, and it didn't year after year. You're like, this is going to be the one, we're going to get everything, and they were like, no.
To give you an example though, like if I had done the Spotlight, I don't mean to play like armchair producer because like Nintendo did a lot of stuff at E3. They did a lot well, like beautiful booth, awesome presentations, all that.
When streams on streams.
For me, the Spotlight then should have been like, you guys want to play a lot of games on the Switch. Here's what's coming, and then done every month, basically saying like, this month you're playing this month you're playing that, like done it like this to show you don't have to worry about having that software drought, and then done the announcements like, oh, you have all these big questions about, will there ever be a real Pokemon RPG on this? Will there ever be a real Metroid on it? In what way?
Right.
And I love those logo and the Pokemon announcement because it answered that nagging question. Will the 3DS always be home to the real Pokemon game when we get like Stadium and stuff and spin-offs? Are we going to get the real deal? And they said Game Freak is working on this, and that means it's the real deal. So I like that. I just felt like the way the presentation went, they could have really nailed the emotional beats if they had played to like Reggie's strengths and just done a little bit better of a job at like storytelling.
He did have that cool poem at the beginning though when he was on the beach. That was strange.
It was an interesting presentation. I felt like they probably would have loved to have more time to prep for this. They
got a lot of irons in the fire.
Like the Pokemon thing, like think about like other companies render, like they would do a big CG trailer.
Well, that's
they spend like 2 months on it.
No, they wouldn't. No, look at Shenmue. Like they didn't. Sometimes you just get a logo.
Well,
like,
that's
and
Shenmue.
it's not great. But you're like I said, you're allowed to do that every 3 or 4 years. Like Sony came out and they're like Shenmue, and then like we got this, we got that.
Kickstarted game. It's a little different.
But
they didn't even know if they were going to be able to make it.
Nintendo's also been really good about showing even a spec tech demo, you know what I mean? Like for that Legend of Zelda demo with the giant spider from the Wii U, like even something like that's just like, here is a tone piece would have been sort of nice, other than just hey.
Is that better though?
It's coming.
Because for like 5 years, I was like, "Where's that game?" And then we never got it. Right? Like
even when Twilight Princess HD came out, it didn't look like that.
no. So I don't know. I don't know
Skyward
what's better,
Sword.
seeing a logo or seeing a tone piece of something.
I mean, the
a
challenge
playable
is
tone
right.
piece.
Is there footage to show? And it look obviously in both cases there was not footage to show.
We don't know with
and
Metroid
Nintendo
Prime.
doesn't really do target renders. They don't do like big CG like trailers when they announce something. It's usually this is what the game will look like. This is what we're confident.
Look
it's
at the
gonna look
Yoshi
like.
and Kirby trailers
or look
this
at
year.
the
Like,
Breath of the Wild when they first showed it and we didn't know what it was subtitled.
I
we were
actually
there
think-
like, holy cow, like he just ran away from that thing. We don't know what its name is, but I mean, granted, whatever. The game came out, it didn't kick up a bridge and like corner you, so you had to fight it there. But that still kind of sold the moment of what they were going for. And we were just there like, holy cow.
Do you think a line of code was written on Metroid Prime, or do you think it's
like a single line of code.
Do you think?
No,
do you
I think
they
not,
started
I think
coding?
not one.
Oh, they're in the
really?
planning phase.
Oh no, I think
No, I think they're.
You think
I think
they're
they're
working
in
on it?
pre-production.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they're super early too.
Yeah, I think they're super early, but I think they're playing with.
I don't think they've even done a title.
I think-
screen,
I
because
think-
otherwise they would have used that.
Holiday 2019 at the earliest. Like, I think we're
You know
so
what?
far
If you're
off.
working off the Prime template, though, it's not like you have to start over from
True.
scratch completely.
Yeah, I feel like you did the title screen last. You know,
think there'll be. You think there'll be a more
It's not like
in
a
there?
book.
Yeah.
You're right. The
I
first
would say
page.
that the thing that stood out to be about Metroid Prime 4 being announced the way that it was is that if Samus Returns had been announced without a Prime 4, I think people would have been upset.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think the
I agree.
sentiment would have been,
That's a really good
where
point.
is Metroid for Switch? More so than, I know you brought up the first-person shooter genre thing, but I think to them it's more, we're announcing a Metroid game for 3DS. Is this the story? And I don't know that it is. I mean, this is just what's left of old journalist Jose kind of turning his
But
gears.
imagine if they had said, we haven't forgotten about the 3DS. It's going to see this and this and this. And
with that.
this little game. And then they would have rolled the kind of like little Metroid Samus Return trailer. And then at the end, they would have said, oh, Switch? And then they would have shown the Metroid Prime 4 thing. Then people would have lost their mind.
Well, they
you know?
created this like arbitrary rule where they're like, well, we're mostly focusing on Switch software, and then they ended it and then ran into the live show where they're like, we also have another Metroid game.
Yeah.
So I think that like I said, I would have loved to see all that together because that would have been. I mean, you probably would have killed a couple people with excitement.
Yeah.
But like
But everything on its own was good. Like, it's like the things were good. Xenoblade, I didn't think showed very well. Like, I wasn't watching that going, but I know
Especially
that those
for an
games
opener.
are good, so I'm excited to play it. you
Yeah.
know?
All right. Well, it sounds like we've said a ton on grading Nintendo's E3. So let's move on then to, just sort of looking back. I mean, here we are, right? This is the end of my run, but the start of something fun and exciting in Pear's run.
It's the end of the Otero era.
Yeah, the
age of Otero.
Oterrible era is over. And I mean, we got to do some fun stuff. I still remember when the show started. I still remember my first week at IGN. I had this secret plot of, NVC, like, why is the Nintendo podcast not weekly?
Yeah.
And it bothered me. I was like, okay, Podcast Beyond is weekly. Podcast Unlocked is weekly. MEC is whenever we feel like it. And for whatever reason, I guess they still come. And I was like, that's not a thing. So I remember I hijacked the show. I didn't ask for permission. I should say that. I'm probably getting myself in trouble right now.
No, that's good.
But I grabbed
What are they gonna do,
Brian.
fire you?
I grabbed. My last days today. I grabbed Marty, Andrew, and Brian, and we went into a room to talk about Earthbound, which is a game that I really cared about. And coincidentally, it was a game that I had just gotten to experience during the end of One Up. And really, like, it just resonated.
What a crazy
with me.
game to play at the end of something.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, but it really, and this was before it was sanctioned and like Nintendo was reissuing it. So we all know what I had to do. But at the end of the day, like, I was so
kill a
happy
guy.
to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
And to have that opportunity to just go, all right, this is what this is.
Yeah, and I think there was something special about that because it felt like we were reflecting on something old, but also creating something new in the process of bringing that voice of Nintendo back to IGN, which is like, I grew up reading IGN because of their Nintendo coverage. Like, I read Craig Harris's IGN Pocket reviews for Game Boy games. I think it's why I bought Link's Awakening, which went on to become
Colors are too dark.
yeah. There's
Is that how we talk?
Too green.
No, but you were still a little freaking 4-letter word swear wording machine, and I remember a couple of the choice
still am.
jokes that were on that.
That's true.
But as we evaluated more what the show is, and some folks didn't like that we chose this, But Nintendo's a family brand, and some people who listen to this show have kids. They play this in the car, and I remember, if we'd swear or if we'd curse, folks would definitely. Oh man, what's going on here?
Here's the deal. Right?
What happened?
You've been here forever, and you have never asked me on this show. I've never been on NBC.
Oh my
and I'm kind of mad about that you're leaving, and I never had a chance to be on the show. So I thought I'm just going to invite myself, and then I don't know. Everybody else heard too, and they thought, yeah, we've never been on NBC either with Jose, and this is our last chance. So we all wanted to come in. So don't even pay attention to us. We're just going to sit right here. You guys do what you do. Just pay no attention to us.
Ladies and gentlemen, meet the new cast of NBC. It's 30 people. And cookies, apparently.
There's still people coming in. Come in front.
We're so sorry.
Yeah.
For those of you listening at home, a whole bunch of people just walked in. But this is obviously a very special moment. You got cookies.
Yeah. Those were made by Lily. She couldn't be here because she had to go home sick. So I don't know if you want to eat them or not, but it's okay.
All right.
You want to start your new job with a cold?
Yeah, maybe. Wow. Thank you. I don't know what to say, and I'm also trying not to cry. So please indulge me. But
We were talking about your
I'm surrounded right now.
We were talking about your favorite moments on NBC.
Yeah.
And obviously we did a lot of great shows, from like live shows with fans to Missing No, the unlisted audio episode of NBC that's about nothing Nintendo. But I think this is one of my favorite moments.
Yes.
Really? Yeah, I think this is too. Wow. Thank you so much for this. Like, it has been an honor to be at this company and to sit in this seat and I'm sorry I didn't invite like half of you on the show. I should say that up for right now. But it has been an honor and a pleasure, and you guys suck. Like, how are you doing this to me? No.
So thank you. You suck.
Thank you.
Perfect.
No.
Encapsulates
Thank you.
the entire IG experience right there.
And the comments.
I don't know what to do. What do we do? Like, we're so off script.
no, like I said, just don't pay attention to us.
Yeah,
do your
just,
thing.
just
we're all good.
bring us out.
Give me one of those cookies, though.
Oh, okay. Here. Have a
Be part of
cookie.
this
No.
moment.
Yeah.
All right.
Yoink.
No, and I sincerely appreciate that.
Well, then don't go. I mean, if you're, you can show
We
your
got
things
you
by just
cookies.
sticking around.
I mean, you got to stay. That's how it works.
Yeah. No, it is. Somebody, I can't. I don't know what to say.
Sign us off, Jose.
Yeah. Sign us off.
All right.
Where can
Take
people
us
find
out,
the show?
baby.
Okay. Thank you for watching and listening to Nintendo Voice Chat. We're a weekly show on IGN, but we're not the only show on IGN. And in fact, there's a whole family and network of people in this room right now here to remind you this show will go on. Pear's going to be leading it, and it's going to be fantastic. And make sure you're here. And thank you so much for the opportunity to sit here and to listen to us talk about Nintendo and talk about games and the things we care about. I am forever grateful, and I will be listening now just like you do every week. Thank you so much, and we'll be back next week with more Nintendo Voice Chat.
Get the thing.